I had nothing left. My dad wouldn't answer the phone. Then I was left at a crossroads to either take another man's suggestions or just go. I wake up and he pulls out this bag from under his pillow and it's a pound of meth. My first reaction is, well, let's get high, or how can I sell this? And I'm in the sober living bathroom withdrawing with nothing to my name, no license, no car. I am so spiritually bankrupt at this point.
What's up? Welcome back to the podcast. This is Wade Mulhauser. I'm your host, the CEO and founder of Plugged In Recovery. Today, I got one of our very special guests, an employee and a good friend of mine, Nathan Evans. Thank you for sitting down. Nate has had an incredible journey with us. Not only have I known him as I was getting sober and around those exact same time, kind of through our same lineage of sponsorship, but just even in his time at Plugged In Recovery, starting in BHT, group facilitating, all the way up to now advising treatment and admissions and helping people, find recovery. So it's an awesome story. Stay tuned. You're going to be excited to hear about it. But without further ado, Nathan Evans, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
I'm delighted.
You're delighted? Well,
Yeah.
Getting into treatment yourself, right? You're not one of the people like most of our employees at Plugged In Recovery. We've all had a past that involves treatment, drug abuse, mental health. How did you end up in recovery?
My story in recovery starts at 16 years old.
Ooh, okay.
Right? I messed up with the law, right? Like a lot of people do. And I got caught with some substances on me that I shouldn't have had on me, but I had them on me and they were mine. And I got charged with some felonies at 16 years old. They put me on the diversion when you're 16, and it allows you to complete some form of work with a probation officer, and they allow you to have your charges completely wiped.
Okay.
Part of that work was going to 10 Narcotics Anonymous meetings, right? So that was my introduction into recovery, was Narcotics Anonymous. And I started my journey in downtown Mesa, right next to the Mesa Municipal Court House. Yeah, there was Narcotics Anonymous meetings there. And that's kind of that was my introduction.
Did you like it when you first went?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. It was in a back alleyway. It was at a rundown church. Now, granted, the message they shared did hold depth and weight. You knew there was God there, right? As sketchy as the house was, it was like an abandoned trailer church. I don't know how to explain it, but just a sketchy part of town.
Yeah.
And I heard a lot of blah 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 God, blah 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 God. But the only thing at the time, being 16, what you guys got going on is cool for you, right? That's what's up. But I've got other plans, right? And by other plans, I meant getting high.
Yeah.
I'm still in school. I have to get a job at 16, this and that. And in reality, it was just, what can I do next to fulfill that hole?
Now, are you one of the people who, did you notice that hole early on? What was like childhood? Was it very, did you see this path for yourself kind of coming with the people you were hanging out with, the crowds you were surrounding yourself with? Was like there a lot of turmoil, or was it something that you feel, you kind of chose to do? I like this, and then took off from there.
Yeah. If I'm being frank with you, I had absolutely no idea my life was going to go the way that it went whatsoever. I could have laid out a 52 card deck pile, and it would have been the last card that I would have chosen. This is the way life is going to go. Now, very early on in my life, I was very escape, escape, anything I could do. And I found that with video games when I was a little kid. I found it with sports, right? Spending hours obsessed with that stuff. And I'm a proud graduate of the DARE program, right?
Heck
Keep
yeah.
kids off drugs.
Yeah.
I remember firefighters coming into my class when I was in kindergarten being like, hey, if you smoke marijuana, you're going to be a criminal. You're a felon immediately. And if you have a tattoo, right?
Yeah.
Things of that nature. And so, but that hole that I felt, that spiritual malady that we always talk about, I was 11 years old, got into an argument with my dad, and it was at that point, I had my first ever suicide attempt, right? I did not want to be in this life whatsoever. It was like, I had a whole puzzle completed inside, but there was one piece missing. And all I could hyper focus on was that one missing piece, and nothing else mattered. Luckily I wasn't successful at that.
Yeah.
Right. And a couple weeks later, I found my first ever love with marijuana.
Okay.
Right.
Fair.
And then that changed the game for sure.
So after 16, you go to Narcotics Anonymous meetings, you get out of Narcotics Anonymous, you go back to probably doing the same old
I was doing it during.
Okay.
I was getting high before the meetings, after the meetings. I'd have people come drop stuff off while I'm at the meetings, because I was on secure lockdown at the house,
Got you.
right? You can go to these meetings, you can drive to these meetings. So that was my once pick up before the meeting, pick up after the meeting. And I'm 16 and doing marijuana and Zans. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was it.
So, did you go to college after high school?
No,
Okay.
no, I didn't finish high school till I was 21.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, take me through that period.
Yeah. I'm about 17. I was taking a lot more Xanax than intended, right? And no, it was not prescribed. It was self-prescribed, right? I was a self-proclaimed pharmacist, right? As we are. And one day, I took too many, go figure, as many days before, but this one was severely uncontrollable. And I packed all my bags up and I ran away from my parents' house and just said, I'm not coming back home. I made it to the airport and then I called my mom. I said, Mom, come get me. Luckily, in my favor, it's funny I say luckily, but my parents were divorced. So I left one household I could go to but I get back to my mom's house and I tell my mom, hey, I'm just going to work. I'm going to go. I got a sales job at a telemarketing office. And because I watched The Wolf of Wall Street and I figured if he can do it, I can do it. And it wasn't that vibe at all at the sales office at all. They weren't throwing midgets on dartboards, unfortunately. But so it's like, I continued to live life, but my issues I was having with addiction just kept ramping up.
When did it become too much? When was it insurmountable, would you say?
At that time. Right at that time is when it was clearly, because at this time, before it was somewhat manageable, but now at this point, I'm damaging relationships. I'm burning bridges. I'm doing things I said I would never do to people that I love, right? So, I mean, all those things, and on top of that, I'm not controlling the amount whatsoever I'm consuming. As of before, maybe, I could somewhat control it, but now it's just completely, wake up, that's my main goal, go to bed.
What led you to this last round of getting sober?
I had nothing left. My dad wouldn't answer the phone. That was like the last, I know that he still wanted to get voicemails just to know that I was still alive, right? But at this last point, I felt that I had truly tried everything I possibly could, right? And so then I was left at a crossroads to either take another man's suggestions or just go die. It was like very plain clear, one or the other. What am I going to do?
Did you end up in treatment the last time?
No. I had ran up my treatment pass.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me about it, because that's one thing I like to always pitch with people is we don't care how you get sober. I'm not here to tell you you're going to go, if you don't go to treatment, you're going to die. You have no chance of recovery unless you go to detox and treatment and outpatient and blah, 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 right? Like you can get sober any way that you want to get sober. What I can tell you, and a suggestion would be, like many others that we watch go through this program, most people need a little time and separation away from that drug of choice. How did you manage to get yourself, a couple days sober? And what did that support system look like without going to a treatment center and getting ripped away, or going to jail where you get, ripped away from the substance?
Yeah. So my last final hoorah, my last attempt at trying to get sober was Suboxone.
Okay.
Right? I had an older stepbrother who had been on it for 8 years, weaned himself off and could drink. And my whole idea was I'll just do the exact same thing. I'll stay on Suboxone for a decade, get off, and have a beer with my dad.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, 6 months into being on Suboxone, I'm running out of my script early. I'm buying it off the street. The sober living I was in, I was buying it from my house manager. Right? So it's like I was still living that same drug addiction tendency, just now with a different substance. Right? And it's like, when is it going to end? Like, what's going to be now what? Right? So I talked to my sober living owners. They're like, dude, you should go to detox. I'm like, okay, sweet. So they were in favor of me getting off Suboxone, but I needed a couple days before detox to do my things, right? Which was get high.
Yeah.
So I get high a couple more times in this sober living and it was awful. Go to detox, 6-7 days in detox. I come out, I'm still withdrawing from Suboxone because I was on it for a while and a pretty high dose. And so I spent the next week withdrawing in this sober living and it was like really sketchy. I mean, the sober living manager was selling me his Suboxone script. So it goes to show how sketchy it was. Yeah. And my roommate at the time, JD Hooker, shout out JD Hooker. I'll never forget you. He's back in prison for another 20 years, right?
Dang.
But I wake up coming out of detox. I sleep. I wake up. He's there. He didn't have any teeth. And he pulls out this bag from under his pillow and it's a pound of meth, right? In the sober living. And I've always been a gutter junkie. Like I could barely scramble up $50 for some meth.
Yeah.
And so I see this whole pound, and I'm like, oh my god. And my first reaction is, well, let's get high, or how can I sell this? And I give him the bag back, and I walk out of sober living, call my sponsor immediately, tell him what's going on. And he tells me exactly what to do. Stay out of the house, pray, go be of service, fill out job applications. Just do that, and you'll stay sober. And I just did that. Right. And I tried my hardest not to think about the meth, but it's all I was thinking about. By the time I get back to the sober living, they found a new sober living for me. Right. And that was Paul Garcia's sober living. And I get in there with a sponsee brother of mine who already had 3 years sober, gave me a red carpet treatment, meeting all these people. And I'm still sick at this time.
Yeah.
I'm like 3-4 days out of detox, still coming off of this synthetic opiate. Right. And so that changed the entire game for me, is getting into that different sober living. When Paul took me, right? The owner took me, but he took me reluctantly, because he looked at my face and saw that I had 666 tattooed on my face. And as a man of faith, he didn't want to take me, right? But as a man of God, right, washing the feet of your enemies, he goes, I'll give you a chance. What do you struggle with? Paul, the main thing I struggle with is consistency. I've never been able to do what I said I'm going to do. So I'm not here to tell you what I'm going to do, right? Either I'm going to do it or I'm not. That's very it. And he's like, all right, cool, sounds good, right? And so that's when I finally actually got sober, after a dozen treatment centers and sober livings and war stories.
Well, the sober living and the right atmosphere can change everything.
100%.
I mean, definitely we hear it all the time, is like there's drugs sold in these places, and and there are some, 100%.
Yeah.
But there are the ones that will change your life. I got sober in Paul's amazing. Yeah. That's who we've modeled everything that we've done after. Right. What did like the meetings and like the step work look like for you in those early days?
Before I got into that new sober living and I called my sponsor, the first thing he said was, well, you better get on your knees and pray, because I don't know who else is going to help you. Right. And I'm in the sober living bathroom, withdrawing, butt naked, with nothing to my name. Right. And I could go in about how messed up no license, no car, I'm in debt, everything.
Yeah.
All bridges are burned, And I'm like, all right, I'll do it. And I got on my knees and prayed, and I continued to pray. And that was like, I feel like was the whole true step one experience. Looking at everything and realizing and just like understanding, I am so spiritually bankrupt at this moment, right? I have nothing to lose. I don't. But on the flip side of that coin, I have everything to gain, right? In those moments of hopelessness, right? And the sponsor I had, he's like, dude, you have dug yourself in an insane hole. And this is the same momentum I keep with my sponsees, right? I don't care. I'm going to jump in that hole with you. I'm going to show you the ladder that I built, exactly how I built it. And I'm going to hold a torch next to you, and you're going to build one and get out of it. By the grace of God, I had a man like that, And I'm not saying the sponsors I had before that weren't like that, but I just wasn't ready, I hadn't been beaten down enough, unfortunately, right? And so that was like all right, I'm powerless and my life's unmanageable. There's no, what do I do? Like, I'm so out of control with my own actions, even in sobriety. I have no idea what to do, And I always thought I always tied it into religion, was brainwashing, right? But if you looked at my life and where I had gone, I needed a brainwashing. There was no doubt in anyone's mind, right? So very early on, I'm just listening to everything my sponsor says, and things start getting better, right? I'm like, if you believe, then I believe. I believe that you believe, right? And that's enough. That's enough to get you started, right? All right, cool, we're started. Are you willing to move forward? Yes. All right, cool, step 3, right? All right, write everything down write every person you hate, everyone you think owes you something, all these, your fears list and a graves list, right? Doing my 5th step with my sponsor, I'm sitting down with him. I mean, I'm shaking to tell him some of these things that I've done, right? And I tell him all these things, and he drives me back to my sober living, and I'm like, I can't believe I told a man all these things about my life, and he's still alive, and he lives in the same city as me. I mean, this doesn't feel right, I wake up the next morning. This is what truly changed in my sobriety. This is the first thing that ever happened, is I get on the bus the next morning to go wash dishes, right? I'm 4 months sober. I smell like hair dye and cigarette butts, and my nails are painted, and I got big gauges, It just wasn't a movie. It's like, yes, let's get sober. But I tell you what, I'm on that bus and I'm driving to work, and I'm looking out, and the trees looked brighter, right? It's like I had foggy lenses and they just got cleared. I had this warm feeling just wash over my body. Not everyone has this experience, right? But I did. And I felt like I could actually, for the first time in my life, in sobriety, look the world in the eyes, right? Or I could start to look at the person in the mirror and be like, I actually like this guy. I want to be this guy, you know? And right then and there, I mean, actions started changing. I started to feel better, right? And in that moment, I was like, that's why these guys do this, right? I'm like, okay. And then the addict mentality, if this feels so good, imagine what step 8 feels like. I got to do more, you know? And so that's really how it started to unfold. And in that moment, and we can go into detail, but every single aspect of my life not only changed, but changed for the better. And hardships still followed, right? I lost my grandfather a couple weeks later. I was really close with him, right? And what did I do? I called my sponsor, I prayed, and I went and helped someone. At this point, I was already sponsoring. I was about 5 months sober. And I was going down to Crossroads Red Mountain, right? And we called it shooting fish in a barrel because everyone's required to get a sponsor. And I had this one guy, it's so crazy because, like, you always have the most needy sponsees when you're always having, like, really rough problems, And I had this guy who, right after my grandpa died, sponsoring, and he wasn't ready to get sober. He was doing tattoos in Crossroads, and he didn't even know how to read. He was 30 years old. He didn't know how to read. I said, that's okay. I didn't know what half these words meant 4 months ago. Like, I'll read this whole book for you, to you. Audiobooks, whatever, And it's just weird how those things work, Real quick, too. 2 weeks before my grandfather died, my sponsor's grandfather died, right? Calls me. He goes, hey, we're meeting for step work tonight. My grandpa died. Boop, hangs up. I'm like, what's wrong with this guy? Like, your grandpa died. Go be with your family. He shows up. We read the 12-step, working with others. He's like, all right, cool. Let's pray. And then left. I'm like, that's weird. Before he left, he's like, now go sponsor guys immediately. I'm like, what? And then 2 weeks later, the same exact situation happens to me, right? My grandfather dies. And it's like, God just gave me the layout on what to do in this moment, presented it to me at my feet. It was weird.
How old were you when this happened?
I was still 20 years old.
That to me is the most mind-blowing thing.
Yeah. It was early, for sure. My 21st birthday, I went to an AA meeting, and one of the persons there, she's Shuvak.
Yeah.
Right? Shuvak was at that meeting, and I told her, because she was speaking, she said this huge 21st birthday prayer, and I felt so embarrassed, but everyone was, like, rowdy for it and hyped. Like, you're 21 in AA? Like, that's the amount. Almost every person there was like, I wish I was you. It's weird.
Yeah.
And I get back to the sober living, and they had a surprise 21st birthday cake for me. All the guys got together. I mean, it was like, because the previous birthdays, Wade, were in institutions.
Yeah.
So to be out of an institution and, like, around people where it's like, this is like genuine love, it was different. And I couldn't have asked for more.
Now, a lot's transpired from there till you're at now. So let's get into being a dad, some of that type of stuff. Because, I mean, you're a young guy who's also been through a lot and who've overcome a lot. And I think it's inspiring for a lot of people to see is, like, you can get sober at a young age. You can have a life probably better than your wildest dream. But like you said, that doesn't come with adversity, working through things.
Yeah. I was 21 when I found out she was going to be born.
Okay.
22 when she was born.
Okay.
Yeah. And at that point, I had a good setup. I had chosen a blue-collar life. I was working in the diesel industry.
Hey.
I was just washing school buses, but I got my foot in the door. Eventually had classes learning the trade to just be a diesel mechanic. And so I'm focused on that. My daughter comes along, dealing with, right now at that point, my daughter's mom, we're just living life. It was amazing, right? And things had started to slip by the wayside, when my daughter was, I think, like 16 months old, my daughter's mom, I love her, she had some issues and she went back out. Right. And it's very tricky in those situations, sharing a child with someone who's, like, actively doing really hard drugs, and staying sober through all that. Right. Cause, I have my own issues, I'm codependent. I want to be Captain Save Her 24/7. Right. And I've witnessed a lot. It's been nothing short of a miracle to have my daughter in sobriety. and to witness childbirth. It has been truly, I mean, I tell people all the time, if you don't believe in God, just go watch a woman give birth. That'll open your eye to something, and hearing that first scream, or, she was born with birth defects. So we were in the NICU for the first 3 weeks, but she had all her intestines out of her stomach. And so the doctor, like verbatim, was like, we got to tie it up in a silo bag and squeeze it in like a tube of toothpaste. Like verbatim. It was like, and they're like, as long as it all goes well, she'll be out of here soon. But as soon as she was born, they took her straight to the NICU and wrapped her up. And I'm sitting there in this waiting room, or in the room, in the NICU room with the baby as they're working on her. She's got 10 nurses all running around up and down the bag, everything. And I'm sitting there just watching it all unfold, and I'm crying. Tears like I was matching serenity with calamity, right? It's like, what a beautiful moment, but it's like, this is terrifying. All her intestines are out of her stomach. I'm completely powerless, right? So that was an experience for sure. We got to bring her home. When we brought my daughter home, I had brought home a stray dog, not by my choice.
Okay.
Not by my choice. And, but I love the people I live with. So I brought home the stray dog. Little did we know this stray dog was also pregnant. So at the time we bring home my newborn daughter, we had 5 puppies in the house that were like 2-3 weeks old, where they weren't even chirping yet, and it was me, my daughter's mom, her mom, and our new daughter, and all these puppies in this 1-bedroom apartment, and it was like fun. We're like, here we are, young, sober, living life, trying our best.
Yeah.
And extremely stressful, right? And there were some days where, like, I'm only looking forward to going to work. I had gotten in that mentality. I'd slipped a little bit out of the program, stepped away, and I'd slowed down on my spiritual maintenance, right? I'd stopped losing connection with a higher power. That very thing that gave me the life that I've always dreamed of having, I was starting to back away from it, and I started to feel it, right? Restless, irritable, and discontented, snapping on people that love me. Now I'm showing up late, I'm just full of excuses, just like being the person you don't want to be.
Yeah.
But, I kept moving forward, and the whole relapse happened with the relationship. I'm just going to be as honest as, like, I'm going to tell you everything,
Yeah.
like, I'm just going to get real. But it's hard when you love someone so much and you see them go through the worst trials of their entire existence, when every fiber of their being wants to change, when they want to be sober, and they just can't, and it doesn't matter how much you want it for them. I don't live with any regrets, but there are some times I look back and just think, like, I wish it could have been different, for sure. And I can admit that, but I can't sit here and say I didn't try at all. I mean, from Narcaning your loved one, right, to sitting in their bedside when they're in a coma, right, and then having them wake up and have amnesia and not knowing who you are, But I got away from all that. We officially separated, and it was very difficult. But at 3 years sober, I finally moved back in with my family. Right. I left my family at 18, and now at 23, I'm coming back with a baby. That's awesome. Right.
Got you.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But when I moved in, like, family over here is struggling, families there struggling. So I was sleeping on an air mattress in my grandma's living room, right, when I first moved back in. And she didn't care. She loves me. And my little one, I had just gotten full custody of my little one. So I had her 7 nights a week. I could barely afford daycare, and I'm trying to sell life insurance as best as I can. And life insurance is not commission, or it's commission only. So it's like, if you don't eat, you will 100% starve, right? And I mean, I'm doing sales like crazy with them, and I loved it. Fun experience. Some people are amazing at it. Some people just aren't. I was not, right? There were some good times. And it was really difficult, though, because I had my daughter 7 nights a week, 23 sober, right? Everyone wants to go out and party, and I'm trying to be locked in, right? The great lock-in, as they call it. And I'm just trying to live life, and dealing with the craziness of, life. And I was just about like 3.5 years sober, and my stepdad, he's been my stepdad for 20 years, died. He had pancreatic cancer and just didn't wake up one day. So rushed him to the hospital, and he was gone. And it sucks. I loved him a lot. I mean, it was funny because he'd been on methadone for like 20 years, and so when he died, we going through all this stuff and just all these methadone bottles, dude, and people's different names on them. You know how we are. I
Yeah.
mean, he was one of us.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. I went to a sober retreat when I was 21, the Knights retreat, and they're showing all the pictures from the previous Knights retreats. I'm like, that's my stepdad. And my stepdad was a part of the Knights in the late 90s when they first started doing retreats. He was one of Brian Ong's sponsees, right? Now it's 2022. So I call him up and I go, how do you know Brian Ong? He goes, oh, yeah, he used to sponsor me back in the day. How's he doing? I'm like, Dad, he's been dead for 15 years. He goes, oh, that's too bad, So he knew a couple of the guys that were still hanging around, and some of them knew him too. When the Knights first started, they only had 2 doctors in the group, and my stepdad was a doctor, right? Now, eventually got his license taken away for overdosing, right, as we do, I find out he dies, right? And it's so, because he was another dad to me. I had another dad, but I was blessed to have like 2.
Mhm.
And, at the time he came into my life, he was like just a college professor teaching anatomy. I would go to him and he would take me to school, and I got to see cadavers. I got to see human brains at like 8 and 9 years old, all this super cool stuff. And so I've had tons of experience with him. And so it was just like losing a full on parent, And in those moments, it's like, this is awesome. I get to be there for my family, right? That's the cool takeaway. I get to be there for his family, right? Because I've got a bunch of stepbrothers. I've got at least 4 stepbrothers from him. Then we're all really close, and I get to be there for them, and that's really cool. And then a week later, dude, I get a call. My oldest brother's in the hospital. He's dying. Just 1 week after. This is a week before Christmas of 2023, right? My oldest brother, he's 10 years older than me. So he'd be 35 right now, but he was 33. And that one was, I wasn't there for when my stepdad took his last breath, but being there for someone taking their last breath, watching them go, I mean, it's, I've seen life and I've seen death in sobriety. I've seen people get Narcan out of dying in sobriety. It was just, I got to be there and hold his hand for his last breath. And my mom and dad, everyone's in the same room. I grew up with a very dysfunctional family. I'd never seen my own parents in the same room together. They would always drop me off in front of their houses, or they'd go to their work, drop us off at their work, and we'd go in. And I'd never seen them face to face until my oldest brother was dying. It's funny how death can bring people together, right? In that hospital room, it's like, whoa, here's 2 main characters I've been living with my entire life, and they're in the same headspace. It was like I was on acid, not to make it all about me,
No.
right? But that was just the experience, and it was tough. I wasn't doing great at life insurance. I just lost 2 very close family members. I have my daughter 7 nights a week with barely to no financial support at all, right? Luckily, my grandma was letting me live rent-free, thank God, right? And I had I was driving around at that 2004 Cadillac that was breaking down every other day, that had no AC, the window was held up by a stick. Here I am 3 years sober, and it's like, you know what? Like, am I where I want to be? No. Am I disappointed? No. Like, I'm okay, right? When they talk about, fear of financial insecurity will slip away, it's not because you're rich. It's because, you can be broke and be okay, right? Like, I can do anything with that relationship with my higher power, right? Like, it's never, man, I was withdrawing at 20 on Suboxone in a sober living, butt naked with nothing to my name, dude, crying my eyes out. And everything changed very fast. I have no doubt in my mind, not only can that happen again, but just because that's happened, it doesn't mean, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
that I think that's the part that a lot of people who haven't found recovery or haven't had that experience, they lack. And it's this confidence in that relationship with a higher power that if I keep doing what I said I would do, which is just trusting you and taking it one day at a time, everything will work out. I can lose it all tomorrow, and 3 days from now it could come all back.
Exactly.
Right? There's no sense in the calamity being too much, because I took that responsibility from me having to figure it out a long time ago.
Exactly.
So I completely understand your sentiment there.
It doesn't matter how hard the battle is.
No.
At all. It's not about the battle.
Yeah.
It's about how we feel about it.
So you get out of that experience. You have that experience with your family. You're still on grandma's.
I was still at Granny's.
Still at grandma's.
Yeah.
So take me from there to now where we're at now.
I go to my stepfather's funeral and I meet his brother. He's the chief of the fire department up in Bullhead City. He looks at me and he goes, "Well, why don't you want to be a firefighter?" And I'm like, "Well, my face tattoos are gone. Well, my felonies are gone. It's been 7 years. I can vote and own a firearm now,
Ooh.
right? I'm actually working on getting a passport too. I haven't been able to leave the state for the last 7 years because I was a felon at 18, right? But now I'm 25. I didn't realize it. And so he says that to me and I'm like, this is possible. Hold on a second. Like I'm side quest maxing at this point. I don't care. Life insurance ain't going too great. I'm down for whatever.
Yeah.
So God kind of threw that in my plate and I'm like, let's go all in. Hey, sorry, I'm stopping life insurance. I might be in debt for a little bit. That's just how it's going to go. Sorry. I'm going all in for, I need something more secure. I go to EMT school. I fail EMT school. I had fun, but I fail. And at that point, Plugged In had just opened up. And, I call up. This is the only time I'd gotten help, really. Well, a couple times I'd gotten help with Gia, like having someone watch her. But I called up my, her mom's family out in New York and say, hey, I need you to take her for a couple months. I need to change my life. They're like, awesome, bring her here. They're wonderful people.
Yeah.
I love them, dude. Long Island Italians, filled with nothing but love and food, And we've been at our wits' end before, especially with my daughter's mom, right? But through all that, I've been able to maintain a good relationship with them. They take my daughter, I move all my stuff. My dad just had this room open at his house. So I moved back in with my dad since the first time since I ran away. And he welcomes me back with open arms, right? We've always had a somewhat good relationship, other than that little heroin thing I had, right? And Xanax really was the big one. But I moved back in with my pops. I'm going to EMT school at this point. Gia's in New York. And it's not looking like I'm going to pass EMT. I took a fast course, and it was too much for me. I didn't give it 100%, though. I'll be honest with you. I can be, I'll hold myself accountable with that one. Let's see. I'm working out every day with a guy that works here, and I had just gotten news or wind that the outpatient was opening. And I'm like, well, it's either Jiffy Lube or if you guys got a position for me, like, cause I'm at this point, I'm 4 years sober and I kind of feel like I've digressed in a lot of ways. And I'm like at a bottom almost. And just because I felt like that didn't mean A, it was true. And B, didn't mean I couldn't get myself out of it with God's help, without a doubt. He'd done it before in way worse conditions, right?
Facts.
And now the only thing that sucks about this one is I'm still sober, But by the grace of God, I didn't have to get high, through all that stuff that was going on. Talking about all these trials that I had been going through, I do have to say, like, there are men in recovery that were there for me through every single thing that had happened. And I could sit here and name names, and they'd probably be upset because they don't want, you know what I'm saying? They would rather be, and those are the dudes, the ones that really saved my life. So I'd call them up and be like, this person's dying. They'd say, why are you being so selfish? Pray and go be there for your family, And I'm like, that's true. That's true. Why am I being so selfish right now and crying? I should pray and be there for my loved ones, But through all these trials, I've had solid men around me. And so now I'm at this point where, I'm not working, just kind of failed school. I got all my stuff moved out here in this area, and you're opening this. And then one stone fell into the other. You're like, well, come on to the team. I'm like, gladly. I'll be here for 3 months before I join the fire department. And it's funny because you and Bravo and all them were like, yeah, we'll see. For sure. Yeah, just stay for 3, maybe 6, And then 6 turned into 9. And 9, I think it's almost a year. In a couple of days, it'll be a year I've been here. And it's funny too, because I did since being here, I'm like, all right, military's not going to work. Or I'm sorry, since being here, it's like, all right, fire department's not going to work. Well, what if I was a cop? I got permanently disqualified from that position, and my family doesn't make it any better. And, all right, what about military? I went through like a career crisis. I'm like, I'm 25, I got to do something. And it's so funny because I was praying, and I finally got my answer, and it was like, just be where you are. Like, your schedule is so set up, you live so close, right? Like, I mean, even if those factors were to change, I could still make it work. But regardless, I've got it set up. Why am I exerting my will to like make my situation actually harder? So, and that's kind of what brought me, that's my whole story leading up. So, and it sucks because like, imagining the firefighting, like I'm like, that's so cool. I want to save kittens from trees. I want to run in burning buildings. I want to help older people that fell out of bed at 3 a.m. I don't care. I'm down, and I'm down to help, you know. And then coming into Plugged In, it's like that's all I'm doing here. I'm gonna get the same amount of satisfaction, right? At least here, I might not get cancer, you know. At least from burning buildings.
Never
I don't know
burn
about
it.
cigarettes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
dude, I
yeah.
love it. No, I remember that essentially we were looking for a person to fill that group facilitator position. Me and Bravo have had a conversation about a buddy of mine, Sam, and we're just like, we could just find someone who's like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what it was, but it was about a day later. I'm at Junkie C,
Mm-hmm.
and I hadn't seen you for a while or whatever it was, but we just ran into each other, and I was talking to you, and I got in my car, and I was like, Ryan, I need Nate's number.
Yeah.
I was just, instantly I was like, this checks all the boxes. And it
Mhm.
was, the coolest thing, the coolest experience been seeing you grow. The effect that you have on an entire outpatient, on bringing the energy, on, we get here, which is awesome. Not only a lot of the evening people are more like executive level, higher end,
Mhm.
et cetera.
Mhm.
But a lot of the daytime can range from, both adults, but younger people.
Yeah.
And we see the struggle all the time of like, I'm 23 years old.
Right.
I have a lot of doing left to
Yeah.
do before I want to get sober.
Yeah.
But being able to see how you inspire them, and then just seeing your growth trajectory where it was like, dude, this guy is made for admissions. I wanted you to learn a little bit more, and I was gonna send you up to Scottsdale. And then when we really looked at it, and Ryan needed a little help at the time, I was just like, we can't not have him do what he's good at.
Yeah.
And that's getting people help
Yeah.
in the moment. And you're killing it, man.
It's been great so far. And I've made mistakes, right? Which is like
That'll happen.
guaranteed.
Yeah.
Luckily they haven't been too big.
No.
But it's all a learning process because I didn't know anything about it. Right. I mean, I have the sales background. I can talk to people. I've sponsored tons of people. But it's really just the system and the process, right? And like how much can we do?
Yeah.
Wait,
Yeah.
right? Can we buy plane tickets? Oh, okay, wait, maybe? Or, like, what's the situation?
Highly illegal to buy plane tickets, fraud, no,
Yeah.
patient brokering, ECRA, all of the things.
I knew that.
No, it's good. And that's what you learn because, you go to a lot of places and there's not a lot of those rules. And,
Mhm.
our real philosophy is like, let's just do this right.
Mhm.
The one thing that we talk about that you do the best job at is it doesn't matter who calls that phone, that person is calling for help,
Mhm.
and we will find you help.
Yeah.
And I can always tell someone who's going to be very good at that job in admissions or very bad at that job based on how they handle that call that we can't take.
Mhm.
Because like that's why we got into this thing is, are we really helping this person find treatment or a solution, whether
Yeah.
it's with us or someone else? And you're doing an incredible job at that.
Yeah.
As far as a little bit of advice for someone either first time in treatment or their second time or third time in treatment, what would you give that person?
What do you have to lose, right? What do you really have to lose at bettering your life? Because that's really what treatment is designed for, is to come together with, right, like we have expert staff, and to completely try and change your life, everything about it, right? Why would you not say yes to that? What is laundry more important, right? You hear all these excuses all the time, and it's unfortunate, right? But that's what stops people from growing, our excuses.
Mm.
And it's just like, just be open-minded, right? How bad do you really want it? Those are things I had to be told when the treatment center I was in took the vans away from us, and we had to walk a mile to a meeting, then a mile to CrossFit, then another mile to the treatment center, and then a mile back to our apartments where we were living. They took the vans away, and it came down to, how bad do you want it? Well, I never want to shoot heroin again. I never want to lie to my mom again. I never want to do this thing again. I never want to do whatever I said I was never going to do ever again. That's how bad I want it, right? How willing are you, right? Because, we can take anyone.
Yeah.
Right? We can take anyone, right? But, at what point, are we really changing lives, right? I've worked in treatment before, and it's, I could sit here and be, oh, it's so different here, this and that, whatever, right? But I would just say I'm not. I wouldn't work for a treatment center I wouldn't go through. And almost every treatment center I've gone through, I didn't want to go through. But for me, I didn't have options. It was either that or homelessness.
Pretty easy choice at that point.
And you run into people like that all
Yeah.
the time, and it's like, so you want to keep being homeless, or you want to change your life, right? I tell people all this all the time. The water's fine. Don't put your toe in. Let's cannonball.
Yeah.
We've been waiting for you. Here's my hand. What are we doing today? Where are we going? What's your plan look like? What are your goals? Right?
I love that.
Yeah.
What would you give a piece of advice for mom, dad, sister, brother with their 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old, where they're just like, I don't think they're ever going to get it?
Yeah, you can't control them. You can't control them, and you have to let them ruin their lives on their own, right? When they're ready, they'll be ready. It's difficult. It's very difficult, right? Because it's like, hey, we are here to help, if they want it. I understand you might want it more for them, but that's not enough, and that will never be enough, unfortunately, right? I mean, I had my dad tell me countless times when I was in rehab on the phone, I'd take a bullet for you, right? But here I am playing Russian roulette with fentanyl, back at it again. My dad would rather take the addiction than me to have it, right? But that didn't matter, right? He eventually had to stop answering the phone, right? Because that was better for him.
Yeah.
And that would be my advice is you have to love from a distance. You're going to have to kick him out, right? Or you can continue to have all your stuff stolen, right? You're going to have to put him in the sober living, right? That would be, there's specific suggestions on how to handle those things, and it's up to the parent if they want to really listen to it or not,
Yeah, they have every opportunity to get sober, but they have to want it. And a lot of times they're not going to want it unless there's some applied pressure with love. And
Exactly.
it's tough love is what it looks like.
Exactly.
Which I can't imagine how much that has to hurt a parent to go through. I've put both of my parents through what they didn't want to do was cutting me off or not picking up the phone or, letting me sleep on the street or whatever it was. But the reality is I got to the bottom to accept the help unless I went through all those things. Nate, I love you. Thank you so much, dude.
Thanks for having me, man.
I appreciate you. So if you call in to Plugged In Recovery, there's a high possibility that you are going to get Nathan on the phone. We would love to help you find treatment. As we said earlier, it doesn't matter if it's with us. It doesn't matter if we take your insurance, we don't take your insurance. You have enough money to pay for it. We don't have enough money to pay for it. We can scholarship part of what you're going through. We can't scholarship what you're going through. We will find you help. It can be with us. It can be with anybody else. It doesn't matter what state you're in. We have resources. Please do not hesitate to reach out for help today. You're worth it. Your loved one's worth it. And we'd love to hold your hand through the process.
Absolutely.
Like Nathan said, jump on in. The water's fine.
Every step of the way.
Every step.
You're not alone.